Is it possible to use animal organs as replacements for human organ transplantation?
In 1984, a 12-day-old infant, baby Faye, received a baboon's heart. She lived for 20 days before her body rejected the transplanted heart. Since the supply of human organs is far less than the need for human organs, researchers continue to search for alternative sources of organs. In 1999, the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, prohibited the use of non-human primate organs for human transplantation unless researchers could assess the risk of disease. A major concern had been that viruses and other diseases that were harmful to the animals would be deadly to humans. Researchers continue to search for alternate sources of organs, including pigs.
How many types of herpes virus are there?
There are 5 human herpes viruses. Herpes simplex type 1 causes recurrent cold sores and infections of the lips, mouth, and face. The virus is contagious and spreads by direct contact with the lesions or fluid from the lesions. Cold sores are usually recurrent at the same sites and occur where there is an elevated temperature at the affected site, such as with a fever or prolonged sun exposure. Occasionally this virus may occur on the fingers with a rash of blisters. If the virus gets into the eye, it could cause conjunctivitis, or even a corneal ulcer. On rare occasions, it can spread to the brain to cause encephalitis. Herpes simplex type 2 causes genital herpes and infections acquired by babies at birth. The virus is contagious and can be transmitted by sexual intercourse. The virus produces small blisters in the genital area that burst to leave small painful ulcers, which heal within 10 days to 3 weeks. Headache, fever, enlarged lymph nodes, and painful urination are the other symptoms. Varicella zoster. Herpes zoster causes chicken pox and shingles. Shingles can be caused by the dormant virus in certain sensory nerves that re-emerge with the decline of the immune system, because of age, certain diseases, and the use of immunosuppressants, excessive stress, or use of corticosteroid drugs. The painful rash of small blisters dry and crust over, eventually leaving small pitted scars. The rash tends to occur over the rib area or a strip on one side of the neck or lower body. Sometimes it involves the lower half of the face and can affect the eyes. Pain that can be severe and long-lasting affects about half of the sufferers and is caused by nerve damage. Epstein-Barr causes infectious mononucleosis, acute infection having high fever, sore throat, and swollen lymph glands, especially in the neck, which occurs mainly during adolescence, and is associated with Burkitt's lymphoma. Malignant tumors of the jaw or abdomen that occur mainly in African children and in tropical areas. Cytomegalovirus usually results in no symptoms but enlarges the cells it infects. It can cause birth defects when a pregnant mother infects her unborn child. 3 other human herpes viruses are also known: human herpes virus 6, HHV6, commonly associated with Rosella, and human herpes viruses 7 and 8, HHV7/8, whose disease association is not yet understood. Herpes gestationis is a rare skin blister disorder occurring only in pregnancy and is not related to the herpes simplex virus.
What is Hopper's rule?
Electricity travels 1 foot, 0.3 meter, in a nanosecond, a billionth of a second. This is one of a number of rules compiled for the convenience of computer programmers. It is also considered to be a fundamental limitation on the possible speed of a computer. Signals in an electrical circuit cannot move any faster.
What are the essential nutrients?
There are 6 essential nutrients: carbohydrates, fats, proteins, water, vitamins, and minerals. Energy nutrients are those that provide the body with the majority of the energy needed for daily metabolic reactions. Carbohydrates, fats, and proteins are energy nutrients.
What is the most massive star?
The Pistol star is both the brightest and most massive star known. Located 25,000 light-years away in the area of the constellation Sagittarius. This young, Oneto 3 million-year-old, star is as bright as 10 million suns and may have weighed 200 times the mass of the Sun at one point in its young life.
What are the gas laws?
The gas laws are physical laws concerning the behavior of gases. They include Boyle's 8 law, which states that the volume of a given mass of gas at a constant temperature is inversely proportional to its pressure, and Charles's law, which states that the volume of a given mass of gas at constant pressure is directly proportional to its absolute temperature. These 2 laws can be combined to give the general or universal gas law, which may be expressed as pressure x volume / temperature equals constant. Avogadro's law states that equal volumes of all gases contain the same number of particles if they all have the same pressure and temperature. The laws are not obeyed exactly by any real gas, but many common gases obey them under certain conditions, particularly at high temperatures and low pressures.
How serious is Bell's palsy?
Bell's palsy, a form of temporary facial paralysis, is the result of damage or trauma to one of the cranial nerves. The nerve may be swollen, inflamed, or compressed, resulting in an interruption of messages from the brain to the facial muscles. Individuals with Bell's palsy may exhibit twitching, weakness, or paralysis on one or both sides of the face, drooping of the eyelid and corner of the mouth, drooling, dryness of the eye or mouth, impairment of taste, and excessive tearing in one eye. Although the symptoms appear suddenly, individuals begin to recover within 2 weeks and return to normal function within 3 to 6 months.
What were Anders Engström's contributions to the development of spectroscopy?
Swedish physicist and astronomer Anders Jonas Engström, 1814 to 1874, was one of the founders of spectroscopy. His early work provided the foundation for spectrum analysis. Analysis of the ranges of electromagnetic radiation emitted or absorbed. He investigated the sun spectra as well as that of the aurora borealis. In 1868, he established measurements for wavelengths of greater than 100 Fraunhofer. In 1907, the angstrom, A, equal to 1 × 10 to 10 meters. A unit of wavelength measurement, was officially adopted.
What is the difference between a virus and a retrovirus?
A virus is a rudimentary biosystem that has some of the aspects of a living system, such as having a genome, genetic code, and the ability to adapt to its environment. A virus, however, cannot acquire and store energy and is therefore not functional outside of its hosts. Viruses and retroviruses infect cells by attaching themselves to the host cell and either entering themselves or injecting their genetic material into the cell and then reproducing its genetic material within the host cell. The reproduced virus then is released to find and attack more host cells. The difference between a virus and retrovirus is a function of how each replicates its genetic material. A virus has a single strand of genetic material, either DNA or RNA. A retrovirus consists of a single strand of RNA. Once a retrovirus enters a cell, it collects nucleotides and assembles itself as a double strand of DNA that splices itself into the host's genetic material. Retroviruses were first identified by David Baltimore, 1938, and Howard Temin, 1934. They were awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1975 for their discovery.
Is there gold in seawater?
There are very minute amounts of gold in seawater. Searching all of the planet's seawater, one could find 9 pounds, 4 kilograms, of gold for every person on Earth. As water reservoirs, Aquifers provide about 60% of American drinking water. The huge Ogallala Aquifer, underlying about 2 million acres of the Great Plains, is a major source of water for the central United States. Water is purified as it is filtered through the rock. But it can be polluted by spills, dumps, acid rain, and other causes. In addition, recharging of water by rainfall often cannot keep up with the volume removed by heavy pumping. In some areas, the aquifer has been decreasing by 3.2 feet, 1 meter, per year and only recharged at a rate of 1 millimeter, a little over 1/32 of an inch, per year. The Ogallala Aquifer's supply of water could be depleted by 80% by the year 2020.
What parts of plants are used for spices?
Spices are aromatic seasonings derived from many different parts of plants including the bark, buds, fruit, roots, seeds, and stems.
Why is the number 10 considered important?
One reason is that the metric system is based on the number 10. The metric system emerged in the late 18th century out of a need to bring standardization to measurement, which had up to then been fickle, depending upon the preference of the ruler of the day. But 10 was important well before the metric system. Nicomachus of Gerasa, c. 60 c. 120, a 2nd century Neo-Pythagorean from Judea, considered 10 a perfect number. The figure of divinity present in creation with mankind's fingers and toes. Pythagoreans believed 10 to be the firstborn of the numbers, the mother of them all, the one that never wavers and gives the key to all things. Shepherds of West Africa counted sheep in their flocks by colored shells based on 10. And 10 had evolved as a base of most numbering schemes. Some scholars believe the reason 10 developed as a base number had more to do with ease. 10 is easily counted on fingers and the rules of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division for the number 10 are easily memorized.
What is acid rain?
Acid deposition is the fallout of acidic compounds in solid, liquid, or gaseous forms. Wet deposition occurs as precipitation while dry deposition is the fallout of particulate matter. Acid rain is the best known form of acid deposition. The term acid rain was coined by British chemist Robert Angus Smith, 1817 to 1884, who, in 1872, published Air and Rain, The Beginnings of a Chemical Climatology. Since then, acid rain has become an increasingly used term for rain, snow, sleet, or other precipitation that has been polluted by acids such as sulfuric and nitric acids. When gasoline, coal, or oil are burned, their waste products of sulfur dioxide and nitrogen, dioxide combine in complex chemical reactions with water vapor in clouds to form acids. The United States alone discharges 40 million metric tons of sulfur and nitrogen oxides into the atmosphere. This, combined with natural emissions of sulfur and nitrogen compounds, has resulted in severe ecological damage. Hundreds of lakes in North America, especially northeastern Canada and United States, and in Scandinavia are so acidic that they cannot support fish life. Crops, forests, and building materials, such as marble, limestone, sandstone, and bronze, have been affected as well, but the extent is not as well documented. However, in Europe, where so many living trees are stunted or killed, the new word Waldsterben, forest death, has been coined to describe this new phenomenon. In 1990, amendments to the U.S. Clean Air Act contained provisions to control emissions that cause acid rain. It included the reductions of sulfur dioxide emissions from 19 million tons to 9.1 million tons annually, and the reduction of industrial nitrogen oxide emissions from 6 to 4 million tons annually.
What are the uses for chromatography?
Chromatography is used to separate and identify the chemicals in a mixture. It is useful to separate and identify the chemicals in a mixture, check the purity of a chemical product, identify impurities in a product, and purify a chemical product, on a laboratory or industrial scale.
What are the most commonly collected debris items found along ocean coasts?
Debris found along ocean coasts is categorized as land-based, ocean-based, or general source debris. Land-based debris blows, washes, or is discharged into the water from land areas. Land-based debris originates with beachgoers, fishermen, and shore-based manufacturers. Processing facilities and waste management facilities. Boating and fishing activities are often sources of ocean-based debris. During a 5-year study from 2001 to 2006, a total of 103 items of debris were collected from various sites along the nation's coasts. Land-based debris accounted for 52% of the total, general source debris accounted for 34% of the total, and ocean-based debris accounted for 14% of the total.
Why is it more difficult to breathe at high altitudes?
It is difficult to breathe at high altitudes because there is less oxygen available in the atmosphere. If the concentration of oxygen in the alveoli drops, the amount of oxygen in the blood drops. At altitudes of 9,843 feet, 3,000 meters, or more, people often feel lightheaded, especially if they are exercising and placing extra demands on the cardiovascular and respiratory systems.
When does 0x0 equals 1?
Factorials are the product of a given number and all the factors less than that number. The notation n is used to express this idea. For example, 5 factorial is 5x4 x3 x2 x1 equals 120. For completeness, 0 is assigned the value 1, so 0x0 equals 1.
What is the Internet?
The Internet is the world's largest computer network. It links computer terminals together via wires or telephone lines in a web of networks and shared software. With the proper equipment, an individual can access vast amounts of information and search databases on various computers connected to the Internet, or communicate with someone located anywhere in the world as long as he or she has the proper equipment. Originally created in the late 1960s by the U.S. Department of Defense's Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, to share information with other researchers. The Internet expanded immensely when scientists and academics using the network discovered its great value. Despite its origin, however, the Internet is not owned or funded by the U.S. government or any other organization or institution. A group of volunteers, the Internet Society, addresses such issues as daily operations and technical standards.
Who discovered the antibiotic streptomycin?
The Russian-born microbiologist Selman A. Waxman, 1888 to 1973, discovered streptomycin in 1943. Streptomycin was the first antibiotic effective against tuberculosis. In 1944, Merck & Company agreed to produce it to be used against tuberculosis and tuberculosis meningitis. Streptomycin ultimately proved to have some human toxicity and was supplanted by other antibiotics. But its discovery changed the course of modern medicine. In addition to its use in treating tuberculosis, it was also used to treat bacterial meningitis, endocarditis, pulmonary and urinary tract infections, leprosy, typhoid fever, bacillary dysentery, cholera, and bubonic plague. Streptomycin saved countless lives, and its development led scientists to search the microbial world for other antibiotics and medicines. Waxman received the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1952 for his discovery of streptomycin.
What are the major organs of the digestive system?
The digestive system consists of the upper gastrointestinal tract, the lower gastrointestinal tract, and the accessory organs. The organs of the upper gastrointestinal tract are the oral cavity, esophagus, and stomach. The organs of the lower gastrointestinal tract are the small intestine and large intestine, also called the colon. The accessory organs are the salivary glands, the liver, gallbladder, and pancreas.
What is a genome?
A genome is the complete set of genes inherited from one's parents. Genome sizes vary from one species to another. The final number for humans is yet to be determined.
Where is the spinal cord located?
The spinal cord lies inside the vertebral column. It extends from the occipital bone of the skull to the level of the first or second lumbar vertebra. In adults, the spinal cord is 16 to 18 inches. 42 to 45 centimeters, long and 0.5 inches, 1.27 centimeters, in diameter. The spinal cord is the connecting link between the brain and the rest of the body. It is the site for integration of the spinal cord reflexes.
Why does the color of clothing appear different in sunlight than it does in a store under fluorescent light?
White light is a blend of all the colors, and each color has a different wavelength. Although sunlight and fluorescent light both appear as white light, they each contain slightly different mixtures of these varying wavelengths. When sunlight and fluorescent light, white light, are absorbed by a piece of clothing, only some of the wavelengths, composing white light, reflect off the clothing. When the retina of the eye perceives the color of the clothing, it is really perceiving these reflected wavelengths. The mixture of wavelengths determines the color perceived. This is why an article of clothing sometimes appears to be a different color in the store than it does on the street.
What is Harkin's rule?
Atoms having even atomic numbers are more abundant in the universe than are atoms having odd atomic numbers. Chemical properties of an element are determined by its atomic number, which is the number of protons in the atom's nucleus.
What is fool's gold?
Iron pyrite, FeS2, is a mineral popularly known as fool's gold. Because of its metallic luster and pale brass yellow color, it is often mistaken for gold. Real gold is much heavier, softer, not brittle, and not grooved.
What is nanotechnology?
Nanotechnology is a relatively new field of science that aims to understand matter at dimensions between 1 and 100 nanometers. Nanomaterials may be engineered or occur in nature. Some of the different types of nanomaterials, named for their individual shape and dimensions, are nanoparticles, nanotubes, and nanofilms. Nanoparticles are bits of material where all the dimensions are nanosized. Nanotubes are long cylindrical strings of molecules whose diameter is nanosized. Nanofilms have a thickness that is nanosized, but the other dimensions may be larger. Researchers are developing ways to apply nanotechnology to a wide variety of fields, including transportation, sports, electronics, and medicine. Specific applications of nanotechnology include fabrics with added insulation without additional bulk. Other fabrics are treated with coatings to make them stain-proof. Nanorobots are being used in medicine to help diagnose and treat health problems. In the field of electronics, nanotechnology could shrink the size of many electronic products. Researchers in the food industry are investigating the use of nanotechnology to enhance the flavor of food. They are also searching for ways to introduce antibacterial nanostructures into food packaging.
What are some uses for coal other than as an energy resource?
In the past, many of the aromatic compounds, such as benzene, toluene, and xylene were made from coal. These compounds are now chiefly byproducts of petroleum. Naphthalene and phenanthrene are still obtained from coal tar. Coal tar, a byproduct of coal, is used in roofing.
What are the symptoms of Guillain-Barré syndrome?
Guillain-Barré syndrome is an autoimmune disorder where the body's immune system attacks part of the peripheral nervous system. The immune system starts to destroy the myelin sheath that surrounds the axons of many peripheral nerves, or even the axons themselves. The loss of the myelin sheath surrounding the axon slows down the transmission of nerve signals, and muscles begin to lose their ability to respond to the brain's commands. The first symptoms of this disorder include varying degrees of weakness or tingling sensations in the legs. In many instances, the weakness and abnormal sensations spread to the arms and upper body. In severe cases, the patient may be almost totally paralyzed since the muscles cannot be used at all. In these cases, the disorder is life-threatening because it potentially interferes with breathing and, at times, with blood pressure or heart rate. Such a patient is often put on a respirator to assist with breathing and is watched closely for problems such as an abnormal heartbeat, infections, blood clots, and high or low blood pressure. Most patients, however, recover from even the most severe cases of Guillain-Barré syndrome. although some continue to have a certain degree of weakness.
How do plants obtain nitrogen?
The primary way that plants obtain nitrogen compounds is via the nitrogen cycle, which is a series of reactions involving several different types of bacteria, including nitrogen-fixing bacteria and denitrifying bacteria. During nitrogen fixation, symbiotic bacteria, which live in association with the roots of legumes, are able through a series of enzymatic reactions to make nitrogen available for plants. Nitrogen is crucial to all organisms because it is an integral element of proteins and nucleic acids. Although Earth's atmosphere is 79% nitrogen, molecular nitrogen is very stable and does not easily combine with other elements. Plants must use nitrogen in its fixed form, such as ammonia, urea, or the nitrate ion.
The states/territories in the United States with the greatest incidence of AIDS. Cases are reported in the following table. What are the symptoms and signs of AIDS?
The early symptoms, AIDS-related complex, or ARC, symptoms, include night sweats, prolonged fevers, severe weight loss, persistent diarrhea, skin rash, persistent cough, and shortness of breath. The diagnosis changes to AIDS, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, when the immune system is affected, and the patient becomes susceptible to opportunistic infections and unusual cancers, such as herpes viruses. Herpes simplex, herpes zoster, cytomegalovirus infection, Candida albicans, fungus, infection. Cryptosporidium enterocolitis, protozoan intestinal infection, Pneumocystis carinii pneumonia. PCP, a common AIDS lung infection, toxoplasmosis, protozoan brain infection, progressive multifocal leukoencephalopathy. PML, a central nervous system disease causing gradual brain degeneration. Mycobacterium avium intracellulare infection, MI, a common generalized bacterial infection, and Kaposi's sarcoma, a malignant skin cancer characterized by blue-red nodules on limbs and body, and internally in the gastrointestinal and respiratory tracts, where the tumors cause severe internal bleeding. The signs of AIDS are generalized swollen glands, emaciation, blue or purple-brown spots on the body, especially on the legs and arms, prolonged pneumonia, and oral thrush.
Which woods are used for telephone poles?
The principal woods used for telephone poles are southern pine, Douglas fir, western red cedar, and lodgepole pine. Ponderosa pine, red pine, jack pine, northern white cedar, and western larch are also used.
What is the effect of radiation on humans?
when ionizing radiation penetrates living tissue. Random collisions with atoms and molecules in its path cause the formation of ions and reactive radicals. These ions and reactive radicals break chemical bonds and cause other molecular changes that produce biological injury. At the cellular level, radiation exposure inhibits cell division and produces chromosomal damage and gene mutations as well as various other changes. Large enough doses of ionizing radiation will kill any kind of living cell.
How many acres of wetlands have been lost in the United States?
Wetlands are the lands between aquatic and terrestrial areas, such as bogs, marshes, swamps, and coastal waters. At one time considered wastelands, scientists now recognize the importance of wetlands to improve water quality, stabilize water levels, prevent flooding, regulate erosion, and sustain a variety of organisms. The United States has lost approximately 100 million acres of wetland areas between colonial times and the 1970s. The 1993 Wetlands Plan established a goal of reversing the trend of 100,000 acres of wetland loss to 100,000 acres of wetland recovery. The most recent Wetlands Status and Trends Report, 1998 to 2004, published in 2005 by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, showed a gain of 191,750, 77,630 ha. Wetland acres, or an average annual net gain of 32,000 acres of wetlands. The net gain in wetland area is attributed to wetlands created, enhanced, or restored.
What are the two forms of energy?
The two forms of energy are kinetic energy and potential energy. Kinetic energy is the energy possessed by an object as a result of its motion, while potential energy is the energy possessed by an object as a result of its position. As an example, a ball sitting on top of a fence has potential energy. When the ball falls off the fence, it has kinetic energy. The potential energy is transformed into kinetic energy.
What is progeria?
Progeria is premature old age. There are two distinct forms of the condition, both of which are extremely rare. In Hutchinson-Gilford syndrome, aging starts around the age 4, and by 10 or 12, the affected child has all the external features of old age, including gray hair, baldness, and loss of fat, resulting in thin limbs and sagging skin on the trunk and face. There are also internal degenerative changes, such as atherosclerosis, fatty deposits lining the artery walls. Death usually occurs at puberty. Werner's syndrome, or adult progeria. Starts in early adult life and follows the same rapid progression as the juvenile form with individuals. Developing disorders usually associated with aging as early as in their 20s and 30s. Most individuals with Werner's syndrome live until their late 40s or early 50s. The cause of progeria is unknown.
If 30 people are chosen at random, what is the probability that at least 2 of them have their birthday on the same day?
The probability that at least 2 people in a group of 30 share the same birthday is about 70%.
How large is the prostate gland?
The prostate gland in healthy adult males is about the size of a walnut. It is located in front of the rectum and under the bladder. The prostate surrounds the urethra. When it becomes enlarged, it squeezes the urethra, restricting the flow of urine.
Who is generally regarded as the discoverer of the electron, the proton, and the neutron?
The British physicist Sir Joseph John Thomson. 1856 to 1940, in 1897 researched electrical conduction in gases, which led to the important discovery that cathode rays consist of negatively charged particles called electrons. The discovery of the electron inaugurated the electrical theory of the atom, and this, along with other work, entitled Thomson to be regarded as the founder of modern atomic physics. Ernest Rutherford discovered the proton in 1919. He also predicted the existence of the neutron. Later discovered by his colleague, James Chadwick, 1891 to 1974. Chadwick was awarded the 1935 Nobel Prize in Physics for this discovery.
How serious is damage to the spleen?
Damage to the spleen, which is often the result of an injury caused by a blow to the left side of the abdomen, may be life-threatening. Since the spleen is a fragile organ, an injury can easily rupture it, resulting in serious internal bleeding, hemorrhaging, circulatory shock, and even death. Once the spleen ruptures, the only remedy is to surgically remove it in a procedure called a splenectomy.
Where are the largest oil and gas fields in the world and in the United States?
The Ghawar field, discovered in 1948 in Saudi Arabia, is the largest in the world. It measures 150 x 22 miles, 241 x 35 kilometers. The largest oil field in the United States is the Permian Basin, which covers approximately 100,000 square miles. 160,934 square kilometers, in southeast New Mexico and western Texas.
What are the major types of bonds?
There are three major types of chemical bonds: covalent, ionic, and hydrogen. The type of bond that is established is determined by the electron structure. Ionic bonds are formed when electrons are exchanged between two atoms, and the resulting bond is relatively weak. Covalent bonds, the strongest type of bond, occur when electrons are shared between atoms. Hydrogen bonds are temporary, but they are important because they are crucial to the shape of a particular protein and have the ability to be rapidly formed and reformed. The following chart explains the types of bonds and their characteristics.
How much paper is recycled in the United States?
In 2008, 43 million tons, or 56%, of all paper used was recovered for recycling. This amounts to 340 pounds of paper for every man, woman, and child in the United States.
What is the name of the seal-like animal in Florida?
The West Indian manatee, Trichus manatus, in the winter moves to more temperate parts of Florida, such as the warm headwaters of the Crystal and Homosassa rivers in central Florida or the tropical waters of southern Florida. When the air temperature rises to 50 degrees Fahrenheit 10 degrees Celsius, it will wander back along the Gulf Coast and up the Atlantic coast as far as Virginia. Long-range offshore migrations to the coast of Guyana and South America have been documented. In 1893, when the population of manatees in Florida was reduced to several thousand, the state gave it legal protection from being hunted or commercially exploited. However, many animals continue to be killed or injured by the encroachment of humans. Entrapment in locks and dams, collisions with barges and power boat propellers, and other man-made objects, cause at least 30% of the manatee deaths, which total 125 to 130 annually.
What is a pixel?
A pixel, from the words pix, for picture, and element, is the smallest element on a video display screen. A screen contains thousands of pixels, each of which can be made up of one or more dots or a cluster of dots. On a simple monochrome screen, a pixel is one dot. The two colors of image and background are created when the pixel is switched either on or off. Some monochrome screen pixels can be energized to create different light intensities to allow a range of shades from light to dark. On color screens, 3-dot colors are included in each pixel: red, green, and blue. The simplest screens have just one dot of each color. But more elaborate screens have pixels with clusters of each color. These more elaborate displays can show a large number of colors and intensities. On color screens, black is created by leaving all three colors off, white by all three colors on, and a range of grays by equal intensities of all the colors. The resolution of a computer monitor is expressed as the number of pixels on the horizontal axis and the number of pixels on the vertical axis. For example, a monitor described as 800x600 has 800 pixels on the horizontal axis and 600 pixels on the vertical axis. The higher the numbers, example 1600x 1200, the better the resolution.
Which place has the maximum amount of sunshine in the United States?
Yuma, Arizona, has an annual average of 90% of sunny days, or over 4,000 sunny hours per year. St. Petersburg, Florida, had 768 consecutive sunny days from February 9, 1967, to March 17, 1969. On the other extreme, the South Pole has no sunshine for 182 days annually, and the North Pole has none for 176 days.
How many individuals are infected with HIV/AIDS?
At the end of 2009, it was estimated that 33.3 million people worldwide were living with HIV/AIDS. Adults accounted for 30.8 million cases of HIV/AIDS. 51% or million are women, and children under 15 accounted for 2.5 million cases. Since 1981, more than 25 million people have died from AIDS.
What is a chemical bond?
A chemical bond is an attraction between the electrons present in the outermost energy level or shell of a particular atom. This outermost energy level is known as the valence shell. Atoms with an unfilled outer shell are less stable and tend to share, accept, or donate electrons. When this happens, a chemical bond is formed.
What gives coral their colors?
Coral have a symbiotic relationship with zooxanthellae. Zooxanthellae are photosynthetic dinoflagellates, one-celled animals, that give coral their characteristic colors of pink, purple, and green. Coral that have expelled the zooxanthellae appear white.
What is solder?
Solder is an alloy of two or more metals used for joining other metals together. One example of solder is half and half, composed of equal parts of lead and tin. Other metals used in solder are aluminum, cadmium, zinc, nickel, gold, silver, palladium, bismuth, copper, and antimony. Various melting points to suit the work are obtained by varying the proportions of the metals. Solder is an ancient joining method, mentioned in the Bible, Isaiah 41:7. There is evidence of its use in Mesopotamia some 5,000 years ago, and later in Egypt, Greece, and Rome. Use of numerous types of solder is currently wide and varied, and future use looks bright as well. As long as circuitry based on electrical and magnetic impulses and composed of a combination of conductors, semiconductors, and insulators continues to be in use, solder will remain indispensable.
What is the role of friction in striking a match?
The head at the tip of a strike anywhere match contains all the chemicals required to create a spark. A strike anywhere match only needs to be rubbed against a surface with a high coefficient of friction, such as sandpaper, to create enough frictional heat to ignite the match. Safety matches differ from strike anywhere matches since the chemicals necessary for ignition are divided between the match head and the treated strip found on the matchbox or matchbook. The friction between the match head and treated strip will ignite the match. Matches fail to ignite when wet because water reduces friction.
Which fungus may have played a role in the Salem witch trials?
The Salem witch hunts of 1692 may have initially been caused by an infestation of a microbiological poison. The fungus, Claviceps purpurea, commonly known as rice mud, produces the poison ergot. When ingested, this poison produces symptoms similar to the ones observed in the girls accused of being witches in Salem in 1692. Historians and biologists have reviewed environmental conditions in New England from 1690 to 1692 and have found that conditions were perfect for an occurrence of rice mud overgrowth. The weather conditions during those years were particularly wet and cool. Ryegrass had replaced wheat as the principal grain because wheat had become seriously infected with wheat rust during long periods of cold and damp weather. The symptoms of ergot poisoning include convulsions, pinching or biting sensations, stomach ailments, as well as temporary blindness, deafness, and muteness.
When was the first time two women shared the Nobel Prize in the same field?
It was not until 2009 that two women shared the Nobel Prize in the same field. Carol W. Greider, 1961, and Elizabeth H. Blackburn, 1948. Shared the prize in physiology or medicine, along with Jack W. Szostak, 1952, for their discovery of how chromosomes are protected by telomeres and the enzyme telomerase.
What is a controlled substance?
The Comprehensive Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Act of 1971 was designed to control the distribution and use of all depressant and stimulant drugs and other drugs of abuse or potential abuse. Centrally acting drugs are divided into 5 classes called Schedule I through V.
How did the search for cinnamon lead to the discovery of North and South America?
Christopher Columbus, 1451 to 1506, was one of many explorers trying to find a direct sea route to Asia, which during the 15th century was thought to be rich with spices. Cinnamon and other spices were so valued in Columbus's era that a new direct route to Asia would have brought untold wealth to the discoverer and his country.
What are Roman numerals?
Roman numerals are symbols that stand for numbers. They are written using 7 basic symbols: I, 1, V, 5, X, 10, L, 50, C, 100, D, 500, and M, 1000. Sometimes a bar is placed over a numeral to multiply it by 1. 000, a smaller numeral appearing before a larger numeral indicates that the smaller numeral is subtracted from the larger one. This notation is generally used for 4 seconds and nines. For example, 4 is written 4, 9 is 9, 40 is XL, and 90 is XC.
What members of Nadaria are economically important?
Reef-building corals are among the most important members of Nadaria. Coral reefs are among the most productive of all ecosystems. They are large formations of calcium carbonate, limestone, in tropical seas laid down by living organisms over thousands of years. Fishes and other animals associated with reefs provide an important source of food for humans. And reefs serve as tourist attractions. Many terrestrial organisms also benefit from coral reefs, which form and maintain the foundation of thousands of islands. By providing a barrier against waves, reefs also protect shorelines against storms and erosion.
What is the rarest breed of dog?
The Talton bear dog, of which only a few remain, is thought to be the rarest dog. In danger of extinction, this breed was once used by the Taldan Indians of western Canada to hunt bear, lynx, and porcupine.
How thick is the plasma membrane?
The plasma membrane is only about 8 nanometers thick. It would take over 8,000 plasma membranes to equal the thickness of an average piece of paper.
What are the transuranic chemical elements and the names for elements 102 to 109?
Transuranic elements are those elements in the periodic system with atomic numbers greater than 92. Many of these elements are ephemeral, do not exist naturally outside the laboratory, and are not stable.
How did the Linux operating system get its name?
The name Linux is a combination of the first name of its principal programmer, Finland's Linus Torvalds, 1970, and the Unix operating system. Linux, pronounced with a short I, is an open-source computer operating system that is comparable to more powerful, expansive, and usually more costly Unix systems, of which it resembles in form and function. Linux allows users to run an amalgam of reliable and hardy open-source software tools and interfaces, including powerful web utilities such as the popular Apache server, on their home computers. Anyone can download Linux for free or can obtain it on disk for only a marginal fee. Torvalds created the kernel or heart of the system just for fun, and released it freely to the world, where other programmers helped further its development. The world, in turn, has embraced Linux and made Torvalds into a computer folk hero.
Who proposed that the left side of the brain has different functions than the right side of the brain?
Scientists have been aware for at least 100 years that each side of the brain controls actions on the opposite side of the body. However, it was not until the 1950s that Roger Sperry, 1913 to 1994, conducted the pioneering research to determine the different functions of the left side and right side of the brain. His experiments contributed to the split brain theory. Sperry received the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1981 for his work.
What is presbycusis?
Presbycusis is the scientific name for age-related sensorineural hearing loss. The first symptom is an inability to hear sounds at the highest frequencies and can occur as early as age 20. Around age 60. There is considerable variation in how well people hear. Some have had significant loss of hearing since age 50. while others have no hearing problems into their 90s. In general, men seem to experience hearing loss more often and more severely than women. One explanation for this difference may be that men's occupations are usually associated with prolonged exposure to louder noises.
How old are fossils?
The oldest known fossils are of bacteria that left their impressions approximately 3.5 billion years ago. The oldest animal fossils are of invertebrates that lived approximately 700 million years ago. The largest number of fossils come from the Cambrian period of 505 to 590 million years ago, when living organisms began to develop skeletons and hard parts. Since these parts tended to last longer than ordinary tissue, they were more likely to be preserved in clay and become fossilized.
What was the first meal on the moon?
American astronauts Neil A. Armstrong and Edwin E. Aldrin Jr. ate 4 bacon squares, 3 sugar cookies, peaches, pineapple grapefruit drink, and coffee before their historic moonwalk on July 20, 1969.
How do prions work and what diseases have been linked to prions?
Scientists have not discovered exactly how prions work. Current research shows that prions accumulate in lysosomes. In the brain, it is possible that the filled lysosomes burst and damage cells. As diseased cells die, the prions contained in the cells are released and are able to attack other cells. It is thought that prions are responsible for the group of brain diseases known as transmissible spongiform encephalopathies, TSES. This group includes the disease that is referred to as bovine spongiform encephalopathy, mad cow disease, when it occurs in cattle, and Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease when it occurs in humans.
What are the advantages and disadvantages of the alternative fuels to gasoline to power automobiles?
The emissions of gasoline are a major source of air pollution in most U.S. urban areas. Researchers are investigating alternative fuels, which are cleaner, yet also economical. Alternative fuels include ethanol, methanol, biodiesel, compressed natural gas, electricity, and hydrogen. Currently, none of the alternatives delivers as much energy content as gasoline. So more of each of these fuels must be consumed to equal the distance that the energy of gasoline propels the automobile. Some predict that in the future families may have different vehicles that use different fuels for different types of driving. For example, electric or hybrids for short trips, an ethanol/electric hybrid for longer trips, and a biodiesel vehicle for hauling large loads. Alternative advantages. Disadvantages. Biodiesel from cleaner than petrodiesel, cost of pure biodiesel. Blends vegetable oils. Reduced emissions, B30, turn into solids in low temperatures. Electricity from no vehicle emissions, good short-lived bulky batteries. Batteries for stop-and-go driving. Limited trip range. Ethanol from corn, relatively clean fuel. Costs, corrosive damage. Biomass, etc. Hydrogen from plentiful supply, non-toxic. High cost, highly flammable. Electrolysis, etc.
Where did the term bug originate?
The slang term bug is used to describe problems and errors occurring in computer programs. The term may have originated during the early 1940s at Harvard University, when computer pioneer Grace Murray Hopper discovered that a dead moth had caused the breakdown of a machine on which she was working. When asked what she was doing while removing the corpse with tweezers, she replied, "I'm debugging the machine." The moth's carcass, taped to a page of notes, is preserved with the trouble log notebook at the Virginia Naval Museum.